Chess, the medieval tool for strategy and power. On a cold morning in Baghdad in 809 AD, as the first rays of sun crept across the city's golden domes, two men sat hunched over a beautifully carved chess set in the caliph's palace. One was a Persian grandmaster, his fingers hovering over a knight carved from pure ivory. The other was a battle-scarred Frankish commander, an emissary from Charlemagne's court. Neither spoke the other's language, yet they were engaged in the most sophisticated diplomatic exchange of their era. What happened next would transform not just a game, but the very way medieval rulers thought about power, war, and empire. This is the story of how a simple board game became the medieval world's most powerful tool for teaching strategy, sparking a revolution in military thinking that would reshape European warfare for centuries to come. From the bustling streets of Baghdad to the torch-lit halls of Gothic castles, from the battlefield tactics of William the Conqueror to the political machinations of Eleanor of Aquitaine, chess wasn't just a game. It was the medieval equivalent of a military supercomputer, a simulator that allowed generals and kings to test their most daring strategies without spilling a drop of blood. And like all great revolutions, it began with a single move. The evolution of chess, from chaturanga to a symbol of power. The elephant's tusk piece tumbled onto the silk carpet of Emperor Harsha's court, rolled twice, and came to rest beside a fallen warrior carved from red sandstone. The year was 625 AD, and in the kingdom of Kannauj in northern India, the world's first recorded chess match had just ended in murder. The loser, a visiting prince from Kashmir, lay dead by his own hand, his honor lost along with his army of wooden soldiers. Emperor Harsha, they say, ordered the game set buried with the prince, but not before having his scribes record every move, creating the first chess notation in history. Whether this tale is true or embellished hardly matters. What matters is that by the time it was whispered in the bazaars of 7th century India, chaturanga, the ancestor of modern chess, had already evolved from a simple military simulation into something far more dangerous, a mirror of power itself. Unlike the dice-based games that came before it, chaturanga stripped away the element of chance. When a player lost, they could blame no one but themselves. This brutal accountability made the game irresistible to rulers and deadly to those who played it badly. As merchant caravans wound their way through the mountain passes of the Hindu Kush, they carried more than silk and spices. In their wooden chests, nestled between bolts of Chinese brocade and pouches of Persian saffron, lay chess sets carved from ivory, jade, and precious woods. Each time the game crossed a border, it changed. In Tibet, the minister became a llama. In Persia, the elephant transformed into a ship of the desert, the rook or rook. But the most profound transformation occurred in the minds of those who played it. Persian manuscripts from the period tell us of the first great innovation, the codification of openings. A brilliant scholar named Al-Adli, working in the court of Baghdad, discovered that certain sequences of moves gave players an overwhelming advantage. He wrote them down in a book called The Balance of Position, creating the world's first strategic manual. Generals read it obsessively. Soon, military commanders began organizing their actual armies in formations that mimicked successful chess positions. But it was the Silk Road traders who truly revolutionized the game. These merchants, moving between India, Persia, and China, faced complex decisions daily. Which routes to take, which alliances to forge, when to press forward, and when to retreat. They saw in chess not just a military simulator, but a tool for teaching calculated risk. Under their influence, the game evolved from Chaturanga's straightforward battle simulation into Shatranj, a subtle game of position and influence. By the time the first chess sets reached Constantinople in the late 7th century, the transformation was complete. The pieces no longer represented just military units, they had become symbols of power itself. The king moved little but controlled everything. The vizier, later the queen, protected through proximity to power. The knights could leap over obstacles, the rooks controlled long lines of commerce and communication, and the pawns. Well, the pawns could become queens if they survived long enough. It was medieval society carved in miniature, but with one crucial difference. On the chessboard, a peasant could become a king. When the Byzantine Emperor Justinian the Saint received his first chess set as a diplomatic gift from Persia, he reportedly stayed awake for 3 days learning the game. By the time he emerged from his gaming chamber, dark circles under his eyes, he had grasped something his military advisors had missed. The future of warfare would belong not to the side with the most soldiers, but to the player who could think 5 moves ahead. The game that reached Europe was no longer just an Indian war game. It had become a handbook of medieval power, encrypted in 64 squares of black and white. And as it spread through monasteries and castle keeps, it would transform not just how medieval leaders fought their wars, but how they understood the very nature of strategy itself. The Islamic Golden Age and the Chess Revolution. Al-Mamun, the Abbasid Caliph of Baghdad, leaned forward on his cushioned throne, studying the chess position before him. The year was 813, and he had just offered the greatest prize in the history of the game, 1,000 gold dinars to anyone who could solve a chess problem he designed himself. The challenge drew grandmasters from as far as India and Samarkand, turning Baghdad's House of Wisdom into the world's first chess tournament venue. Crowds gathered daily in the Grand Hall, watching in silence as masters like Al-Adli and Al-Suli demonstrated moves so innovative they required new words to describe them. The Arabic term kifaya, sufficiency, emerged to describe a position where victory was inevitable, even if it took 50 moves to achieve. Players began thinking not just about their next move, but about creating positions that would become advantageous many moves later, a revolutionary concept that would later transform military strategy. The real breakthrough came from an unexpected source: the mathematicians. Al-Khwarizmi, the father of algebra, became obsessed with chess problems, seeing in them a perfect expression of his mathematical principles. He began cataloging chess positions using his new numerical system, creating the first systematic study of chess strategy. His work revealed patterns that had been invisible to earlier players. Suddenly, chess wasn't just a game of intuition, it was a science. In the winding streets of Baghdad's Scholars' Quarter, a new profession emerged: the Shatranj Muallim, or chess teacher. These masters commanded fees higher than professors of law or medicine. Their students included not just nobles and military commanders, but merchants and craftsmen who saw in chess a way to understand risk and opportunity. One famous teacher, Abu Bakr al-Suli, became so renowned that he was forbidden to play in public. His victories over royal patrons had become politically embarrassing. The greatest innovation of this period came from a female player, Mokhtar's daughter al-Hakam, who revolutionized endgame theory. She discovered that certain pawn formations, properly positioned, could be more powerful than multiple pieces, an insight that would later influence castle design across Europe. Her treatise, The Hidden Power of Lesser Forces, circulated through the Islamic world, eventually reaching as far as Muslim Spain. But it was in the realm of psychology that Baghdad's chess masters made their most lasting contribution. They understood that the game was won not on the board, but in the mind of the opponent. Al-Razi, a grandmaster and physician, wrote the first treatise on chess psychology, The Mirror of Minds, analyzing how different personality types approached the game. His work became required reading for diplomats and spies, who used his insights to evaluate foreign rulers. As Baghdad's influence spread, its chess culture spread with it. The game reached new levels of sophistication in centers like Cairo, Cordoba, and Damascus. Each city developed its own chess school, its own theoretical innovations. In Damascus, players pioneered the use of tactical sacrifices, deliberately losing pieces to gain positional advantage. In Cairo, grandmasters developed the art of the counterattack, proving that apparent weakness could be turned into strength. By the end of the 9th century, chess had become more than a game in the Islamic world. It was a complete system of strategic thought. When European crusaders encountered it in the Holy Land, they found themselves facing not just a superior military force, but a superior way of thinking about conflict itself. The chess masters of Baghdad had created something unprecedented, a universal language of strategy that transcended culture, religion, and even the battlefield itself. As one anonymous Baghdad poet wrote, "In chess, as in life, the wise man sees not just what is, but what could be. And in this seeing lies the seed of victory. Chess, the game that conquered medieval Europe." The ivory chess piece lay buried in the frozen Norwegian earth for nearly 9 centuries before a farmer's plough brought it to light, a knight from the legendary Lewis chessman, its rider's face frozen in an eternal expression of Nordic stoicism. But how did an intricately carved piece of Indian elephant tusk, crafted in the Islamic style, end up in a Viking burial ground? The answer lies in one of history's most remarkable cultural conquests. In 1066, William the Conqueror's invasion fleet carried something more dangerous than swords across the English Channel, 64 squares that would transform European warfare. William's Norman knights had learned chess during their Mediterranean campaigns, and they brought with them a new way of thinking about battle. At Hastings, William deployed his armies in a pattern that mirrored a chess tactic, spreading his forces wide before concentrating them for a decisive thrust, just as a skilled player spreads their pieces before launching a kingside attack. King Harold's Saxons, trained in the old shield wall tactics, never saw the true threat until it was too late. Chess swept through medieval Europe like wildfire through dry timber. In monasteries, monks who had once spent their days copying biblical texts now filled margins with chess problems. The church's initial resistance crumbled when clerics discovered the game's potential for teaching moral lessons. One Spanish abbot wrote, "As the king cannot win alone, so a ruler needs his people." The game even infiltrated architecture. The black and white marble floors of Gothic cathedrals were often sized and proportioned as giant chessboards, a subtle reminder that every soul's journey was a game of strategic choices. The Crusades accelerated the game's spread, but with an ironic twist. European knights who marched east to fight Muslims found themselves captivated by their enemies' sophisticated chess culture. Returning crusaders brought back not just relics and spices, but new chess strategies that would revolutionize European warfare. The military orders, Templars and Hospitallers, became the game's greatest propagators, establishing a network of chess schools that stretched from Scotland to Jerusalem. In the glittering court of Eleanor of Aquitaine, chess became a weapon of political seduction. The queen, already famous for her cultivation of courtly love poetry, recognized the game's potential for diplomatic manipulation. She commissioned a chess set where all the pieces bore the faces of her political rivals, allowing her to wargame political scenarios with devastating effectiveness. Her son, Richard the Lionheart, would later use chess strategies learned at her knee to outmaneuver his opponents both on and off the battlefield. The game's terminology infiltrated every aspect of medieval life. Checkmate became a common metaphor in political documents. One English charter from 1181 describes a lord's defeat in court as a fool's mate by the king's bishop. Merchants began using chess terms to describe business tactics. To fork one's opponents entered the vocabulary of both chess players and guild masters, describing any move that created two simultaneous threats. Yet perhaps the most profound transformation occurred in how Europeans understood fate itself. In a world dominated by religious determinism, chess offered a radical proposition. The future wasn't fixed, but could be shaped by calculated decisions. When Alfonso X of Castile commissioned his famous Book of Games in 1283, he placed chess above all other games precisely because it depended not on dice or chance, but on understanding and reason. By the time Marco Polo departed for China in 1271, he found chess so ubiquitous in Europe that he used it as a point of cultural comparison in his travels. The game that had arrived as a foreign curiosity had become a cornerstone of European strategic thought, transforming not just how wars were fought, but how an entire civilization understood power, strategy, and the art of the possible. The Norwegian knight, buried with its Viking owner, tells us something profound. Chess had become more than a game. It had become a lens through which medieval Europe viewed the world, a lens that would soon focus the light of strategic thinking into a revolutionary fire. Queens and bishops, the medieval power shift. Isabella of France stood at her window in the Tower of London, a chess piece clutched in her hand, not a king, but a queen. The year was 1325, and she was plotting the most audacious power grab in English history. The piece she held embodied a revolution that had been quietly reshaping Europe's most popular game, and with it, the medieval understanding of power itself. In the span of a single generation, chess's weakest piece had become its strongest, marking the first time in history that a female figure dominated any battlefield, real or imagined. The transformation had begun in the sun-drenched courts of southern Europe, where powerful queens like Eleanor of Provence were rewriting the rules of both politics and chess. The old Arabic vizier, which could move only one diagonal space at a time, evolved into a piece of devastating mobility. Chess masters called this new move Regina Libre, the Free Queen. It was no coincidence that this change coincided with the rise of extraordinary female rulers, Blanche of Castile, who outmaneuvered a coalition of rebel barons, Melisenda of Jerusalem, who ruled the Crusader kingdoms with an iron will, and Margaret of Denmark, who unified Scandinavia under a single crown. Bishops too underwent a metamorphosis that reflected shifting power dynamics. Their newfound ability to slice across the board diagonally mirrored the indirect but profound influence of the medieval church. One anonymous chronicler noted, "As the bishop moves sideways through the world, so does God's power move invisibly through earthly affairs." The piece's dark and light square limitations sparked fierce theological debates about divine predestination versus free will. In the bustling port of Venice, where East met West, chess set carvers began experimenting with radical new designs. The traditional abstract Muslim pieces gave way to elaborate European figures, crowned queens, mitred bishops, and horses bearing armored knights. Each new design made bold statements about power and authority. One notorious set depicted the queen with features resembling the maker's patron, while the opposing king bore an unmistakable resemblance to her husband's rival. The gameplay implications were revolutionary. Traditional chess had been a slow dance of position and attrition. The new queen transformed it into a lightning war of decisive strikes. Players who failed to adapt found themselves swept from the board by this feminine fury. A Spanish grandmaster lamented, "The game has become wild and dangerous, like a woman scorned." His Persian counterpart retorted, "It has become true, like power itself." At Oxford, scholars linked this transformation to broader changes in medieval warfare. The Queen's unlimited movement in all directions paralleled the increasing importance of rapid cavalry attacks and flexible tactics. Traditional chess wisdom, focused on holding static positions, crumbled before strategies that emphasized mobility and surprise. The bishop's diagonal sweep mirrored the rising importance of crossbow units attacking from oblique angles. By the time Isabella of France launched her invasion of England in 1326, the chess queen had become so powerful that players began developing entirely new defensive strategies. The queen's shield formation of pawns became standard practice both on the chessboard and, remarkably, on actual battlefields. When Isabella's forces landed in Suffolk, they deployed in a pattern that would have been instantly recognizable to any chess player of the era. The final irony came in 1344, when Edward III commissioned new chess sets for the royal household. The queen pieces were carved to resemble his mother Isabella, the very woman who had deposed his father. Each queen bore a tiny crown and carried an even tinier chess piece in her hand, an infinite regression of power and strategy that captured the complexity of the age. The game, like medieval society itself, had been transformed by the recognition that true power knows no gender. These changes marked more than just new rules for an ancient game. They represented a fundamental shift in how medieval Europe understood power itself, not as something fixed and hierarchical, but as fluid, dynamic, and capable of flowing through unexpected channels. The Queen's rise on the chessboard preceded similar transformations in European society by generations, making the game not just a mirror of medieval power, but a prophecy of changes yet to come. Chess and the Art of War, a historical perspective. The morning of July 15th, 1410 began with a chess game. As dawn broke over the forests of Grunwald, Grand Master Ulrich von Jungingen of the Teutonic Knights arranged 40 of his mounted knights in a perfect replica of his favorite chess opening. What happened next would prove that mastery of the board didn't always translate to mastery of the battlefield. King Władysław of Poland was no chess player, but he understood something deeper about the difference between wooden pieces and living soldiers. While medieval commanders studied chess for tactical insights, a quiet revolution was taking place among the common soldiers. Veterans taught recruits to think in chess terms: control the center, protect your flanks, look for the fork. In Welsh longbow companies, archers used chessboards scratched in dirt to plan their arrow patterns. The squares helped them calculate trajectories and coverage zones with unprecedented precision. One English chronicle notes that a single chess-trained archer could effectively control 64 yards of battlefield, the same number as squares on a board. The Byzantines elevated chess-based military training to an art form. Their manual, Strategicon, included 40 chess problems that every officer had to solve before promotion. These weren't simple tactical puzzles. They were complex scenarios involving supply lines, terrain advantages, and troop morale. The brilliant general Nikephoros Phocas required his commanders to play blindfolded chess, arguing that true strategic mastery meant holding the entire battlefield in one's mind. But it was the Mongols who made the most devastating use of chess principles. Subutai, Genghis Khan's greatest general, explicitly modeled his famous horn tactic on the knight's move in chess, an L-shaped assault that could leap over enemy defensive lines. At the Battle of Mohi in 1241, he used this approach to devastating effect, proving that chess strategies could work even against opponents who recognized them. The key was not the pattern itself, but the timing of its execution. In the mountains of Syria, the Assassin's Order developed a hybrid form of chess that incorporated actual terrain features. Their fortress chessboards included raised areas, depressed squares, and tiny walls, transforming the game into a three-dimensional battle simulator. These boards were so accurate that when the Mongols finally besieged the assassin strongholds, they reportedly found the defenders' tactics eerily familiar. They had been practicing them in miniature for years. Mediterranean naval commanders adapted chess concepts to warfare at sea. The Venetian fleet used colored flags to coordinate ship movements based on chess patterns. The rook's sweep became a standard naval maneuver, a direct line of attack followed by a sudden perpendicular turn, just like the castle's movement on the board. During the Battle of Curzola in 1298, Marco Polo witnessed this tactic break the Genoese line, though he himself watched from a prison cell. But not all chess-inspired strategies succeeded. At the Battle of Nicopolis in 1396, the French knights, confident in their chess-derived battle plans, charged directly at the Ottoman center, a move that would have been brilliant on the board, but proved catastrophic on the battlefield. The Ottoman commander, Bayezid I, had also studied chess, but he understood its limitations. He allowed the French knights to penetrate his lines, then enveloped them in a maneuver impossible on any chessboard. Chess's influence reached beyond tactics to logistics and planning. The game taught commanders to think in terms of supply lines, like paths of pawns advancing, force concentration, like pieces supporting an attack, and strategic reserves, like back-rank defenders. The Hospitaller Knights developed a military planning system based entirely on chess notation, allowing them to communicate complex battle plans in a few simple characters. Yet perhaps chess's greatest military contribution wasn't tactical at all, but psychological. It taught commanders the crucial lesson that every move creates new vulnerabilities, that perfect plans rarely survive contact with an intelligent opponent, and that sometimes the best strategy is to force your enemy to make a move, any move, and work with the weaknesses they reveal. As the sun set over Grunwald that July evening, Ulrich von Jungingen's perfect chessboard formation lay in ruins. King Władysław had ignored the elegant rules of the game and simply hammered the Teutonic lines until they broke. The Grandmaster died on the field, discovering too late that war, unlike chess, doesn't always reward the most elegant solution. Sometimes it favors the player willing to knock the board over and fight in the chaos that follows. Chess and castles, strategy in stone and court. The architect stood before King Philip II of France, unrolling plans for the most ambitious castle ever conceived. Chateau Gaillard would rise above the Seine River like a stone chess piece, its concentric walls and overlapping fields of fire, designed by a man who had spent decades studying not just masonry and mechanics, but the subtle strategies of the royal game. The year was 1196, and architecture was about to merge with chess in ways that would revolutionize medieval warfare. Richard the Lionheart, who commissioned the castle, insisted on an innovative feature. The walls were built in a series of irregular curves, like the unpredictable path of a queen across the board. Traditional straight walls, like rank-and-file pawns, could be methodically undermined. These new undulating defenses forced attackers to constantly recalculate their approach, draining resources and morale. When Philip II finally captured the castle in 1204, he immediately ordered his own architects to study its design. In the great halls of these new chess-inspired castles, an equally profound revolution was taking place. Young nobles no longer learned warfare first through hunting or swordplay, but through chess. The game had become a mandatory part of the 7 knightly virtues, alongside horsemanship and poetry. Pages as young as 7 began their military education by learning not to swing a sword, but to control the 64 squares. Their teachers were often retired soldiers who had discovered that the game revealed more about a student's character than any physical test. The royal courts of Europe transformed into living chessboards, where position and influence were measured in moves and counter-moves. In the French court, the position of royal chess master became more influential than the master of horse or master of hounds. These chess masters were often commoners, creating unprecedented social mobility. One famous instance saw a merchant's son become a king's closest advisor purely through his strategic brilliance at the board. Court spies adopted chess as their primary tool for evaluating foreign rulers. A diplomat's report from 1215 Venice contains nothing about the Doge's military forces or treasury, only a detailed analysis of his chess-playing style, from which his advisors drew surprisingly accurate predictions about his political decisions. He sacrifices pawns needlessly, one observer wrote, and will therefore be wasteful with his citizens' lives. The castle's architecture itself began to reflect chess principles. Spiral staircases were built clockwise, not just to favor right-handed defenders, but to create what chess players called permanent positional advantage. Arrow loops were arranged in patterns that mimicked the coverage of bishops and rooks on the board. Even gardens were laid out in chess-like patterns, with hedges and paths creating tactical puzzles for both aesthetic and defensive purposes. Perhaps most remarkably, chess began to influence the very rhythm of castle life. The game's alternating turns inspired new protocols for court ceremonies. Important meetings were scheduled according to the chess clock's rhythm. Each party allotted specific times to make their case, just as players were allotted time for moves. This system, radical for its era, survives today in modern parliamentary procedure. In Scotland, the ambitious Lord Douglas commissioned a castle whose great hall could transform into a life-size chessboard, with courtiers serving as pieces. These living chess matches became elaborate pageants where political alliances were forged and broken, all under the guise of gameplay. The tradition spread across Europe, with Venice staging famous matches where ships maneuvered on the lagoon according to chess moves called out from the Doge's palace. But it was in the private chambers of power where chess exerted its most profound influence. Medieval documents reveal that crucial decisions of state were often gamed out on the board before being implemented in reality. When Edward I of England planned his conquest of Wales, he reportedly spent weeks playing chess variants that incorporated actual Welsh terrain features. His eventual campaign followed patterns first tested on the board. As the sun set through the arrow loops of Chateau Gaillard that first evening in 1196, shadows fell across the Great Hall's chessboard in strange new patterns. The castle's innovative design had merged the physical and intellectual aspects of medieval warfare into something entirely new, a three-dimensional chess game where architecture itself could be wielded as a weapon, and where the principles of the board had become principles of stone and strategy. The master architect's final report to Richard contained a telling phrase: "Every castle is a game of chess frozen in stone, waiting for the moment when the pieces come alive." It was perhaps the perfect metaphor for an age when the line between game and reality had begun to blur, and when the strategies of the board were reshaping the very world in which they were played. Chess and commerce, the merchant's strategic revolution. In the bustling port of Bruges, 1283, a Hanseatic merchant named Klaus von Werdenfeld made history with a single chess move. Playing against a noble in a crowded trading hall, he sacrificed his queen to gain control of a crucial trade route, not on the board, but in reality. The noble, honor-bound by the customs of chess gambling, was forced to grant Klaus's ships free passage through his waters. It was the first documented instance of chess directly altering a major trade agreement, but it would not be the last. The medieval merchant class revolutionized chess by introducing an element its noble players had never considered: quantifiable risk assessment. In Venice's Rialto district, merchants developed a sophisticated betting system around chess that precisely calculated odds based on piece position and player reputation. These same mathematical principles were then applied to trade ventures. The term calculated risk first appeared in a chess manual written by a Florentine silk merchant. Urban chess clubs became the world's first business networking centers. In London's Cheapside, the Guild of Strategic Endeavour operated from a 3-story building where merchants could play chess, negotiate deals, and exchange market intelligence. Membership records from 1298 show an extraordinary mix of social classes: wool merchants playing against barons, spice traders competing with bishops. The chessboard had become the great equalizer, where birth mattered less than strategic acumen. The famous trading families of Italy transformed chess methodology itself. The Medicis pioneered what became known as position trading, sacrificing material advantage for better board position, just as they would later sacrifice immediate profits for market control. Their approach spread through trading networks to become standard merchant practice: patience over quick profit, position over immediate gain. In the Jewish quarters of medieval cities, chess took on another dimension entirely. Banned from many traditional trades, Jewish merchants excelled at chess-based commerce. They developed complex systems of chess notation that doubled as encrypted business communications. A seemingly innocent record of chess moves could contain detailed information about prices, quantities, and market conditions. Some of these codes were so sophisticated that modern cryptographers still study them. The Hanseatic League formalized the connection between chess and commerce by requiring member merchants to achieve a certain level of chess proficiency. Their reasoning was practical. A merchant who couldn't think several moves ahead in chess would likely fail to anticipate market changes. Trading houses began maintaining chess ratings for potential business partners, an early form of credit rating that proved surprisingly accurate at predicting business success. A new piece of furniture appeared in merchant homes: the combination chess table and accounting desk. These ingenious items had hidden compartments that could transform from chess storage to bookkeeping stations. The most elaborate examples, crafted in Nuremberg, included built-in abacuses and secret drawers for confidential documents. The physical fusion of chess and commerce was complete. In Constantinople's Grand Bazaar, merchants developed a variant of chess that incorporated actual market conditions. Piece values fluctuated based on real-world trade prices. A shortage of silk might strengthen the bishop's power, a grain surplus could weaken the pawns. This market chess became so popular that some historians argue it was an early form of commodities futures trading. But perhaps the most profound innovation came from the Arab merchant communities of Spain. They introduced the concept of position points, tracking the strategic value of each square on the board, just as they tracked the value of trading posts along the Silk Road. This system eventually evolved into modern chess evaluation methods, but its principle came straight from the counting houses of medieval merchants. By 1300, when the first merchant prince was elected Doge of Venice, the transformation was complete. Chess had evolved from a noble military simulation into something far more sophisticated, a training ground for commercial warfare. The merchant's greatest contribution was to show that victory didn't always require capturing the king. Sometimes controlling the center squares was enough to dominate the entire economic board. Claus von Werdenfeld's famous queen sacrifice in Bruges did more than secure a trading route. It demonstrated that in the new commercial age, even the most powerful piece could be traded for something of greater value: opportunity. As one medieval merchant's ledger noted, "In chess, as in trade, the wise man profits not from what he takes, but from what he makes possible." Manuscripts and mysteries: chess as a universal language of strategy. In 1239, a mysterious package arrived at the court of Frederick II, Holy Roman Emperor. Wrapped in silk and sealed with Persian wax, it contained a single chess problem so complex that it took his finest minds 3 months to solve. The solution, when finally discovered, revealed not just a brilliant checkmate sequence, but a coded message about an imminent assassination attempt. The emperor's life was saved by a chess puzzle. The Göttingen manuscript, discovered in a German monastery's hidden vault, revolutionized medieval cryptography. Its pages contained what appeared to be simple chess problems, but closer examination revealed an ingenious system of steganography. The positions of certain pieces spelled out secret messages in a code that wouldn't be fully deciphered until the 20th century. Modern analysis suggests it was used by a network of scholar spies spanning 3 continents. Alfonso X's Book of Games concealed something even more remarkable: an entire philosophical system encoded in chess positions. Each problem corresponded to a specific moral dilemma, creating what amounted to an ethical training program disguised as a game manual. One famous position, known as the King's Choice, presented a situation where winning the game required sacrificing one's own moral principles, a test that became standard for medieval rulers. In the scriptorium of Mont Saint-Michel, monks developed the first systematic notation for recording chess games. Their innovation wasn't just technical, they created a way to preserve not just moves, but strategic thinking itself. The margins of their manuscripts bloomed with detailed psychological analyses of why players chose certain moves, creating the world's first recorded insights into strategic decision-making. The greatest mystery emerged from the Alhambra Palace in Granada. A seemingly ordinary collection of chess problems contained musical notations in its margins. When the piece movements were translated into musical notes following the indicated pattern, they produced complete melodies. These chess songs proved to be encrypted military orders, used during the final days of Moorish Spain to coordinate resistance against the Christian reconquest. Florence's merchant houses transformed chess manuscripts into financial instruments. The Peruzzi family commissioned chess problems where the solutions predicted market movements. The position of pawns indicated commodity prices, while the relationships between pieces mapped trade routes and alliances. These commercial compositions were so valuable that they were guarded as closely as modern banking algorithms. The Vatican Library held the infamous Devil's Games manuscript, a collection of chess problems so difficult they were believed to have supernatural origins. Analysis shows they were centuries ahead of their time, exploring concepts of positional sacrifice and strategic compensation that wouldn't be fully understood until the modern era. The manuscript's creator remains unknown, though some scholars attribute it to a mysterious Jewish mathematician from Toledo. But the most profound impact of chess manuscripts came through their democratization of strategic thinking. Copying and studying chess problems became a standard part of monastic education, spreading sophisticated strategic concepts to all levels of medieval society. A peasant who could read chess notation might not read Latin, but they could understand complex strategic patterns that had once been the exclusive province of generals and kings. In 1400, an anonymous English scribe created what might be the most important chess manuscript never written. The Phantom manuscript, known only through references in other works, supposedly contained a grand unified theory of strategy, a way to mathematically predict the optimal move in any position. Though the manuscript itself was lost if it ever existed, the quest to find or recreate it drove developments in mathematics, logic, and eventually, computer science. The manuscripts served another, subtler purpose. They preserved games played by history's great figures, capturing their strategic thinking in amber. We can still play against Charlemagne, Richard the Lionheart, or Saladin by following their recorded games. These games reveal more about their personalities and decision-making than any chronicle or biography. As twilight fell across medieval Europe, countless scribes bent over their desks, carefully copying chess problems that were far more than mere puzzles. They were preserving and transmitting a universal language of strategy, creating a bridge of pure logic that connected East and West, past and future, king and commoner. Every chess manuscript was a message in a bottle, cast into the ocean of time, carrying encoded wisdom that we are still deciphering today. The timeless legacy of chess, from medieval boards to modern strategy. When IBM's Deep Blue defeated world champion Garry Kasparov in 1997, the medieval ghosts in the machine laughed. The computer's evaluation algorithms, calculating positions 200 moves ahead, were built on principles first discovered in a Baghdad courtyard 11 centuries earlier. Al-Adli, that brilliant Persian master, would have recognized the pattern recognition systems at Deep Blue's core. They were simply faster versions of his own positional theories. The legacy of medieval chess survived in unexpected places. The United States Military Academy at West Point still uses chess-derived principles to teach battlefield visualization. Their advanced tactical training includes medieval chess problems from the Göttingen collection, proven over centuries to develop the ability to see complex patterns in chaos. Modern commanders studying drone warfare and cybersecurity find themselves rediscovering principles first mapped out on monastery chess boards. Silicon Valley's fascination with chess betrays its medieval DNA. The term startup strategy could have been lifted directly from a merchant's chess manual in medieval Bruges. Venture capitalists evaluate business plans using criteria that would be familiar to any Hanseatic trader: control of key positions, efficient use of resources, and the ability to pivot when circumstances change. Even the modern concept of disruption echoes the tactical innovations of chess-playing merchants who upended medieval trading networks. The architectural influence persisted in surprising ways. Modern military installations still incorporate principles first developed for chess-inspired castles. The concept of overlapping fields of fire, essential to modern defense systems, can be traced directly to the way medieval architects arranged arrow loops to mimic the coverage patterns of chess pieces. When the Pentagon was designed in 1941, its planners unconsciously echoed the principles of concentric defense first developed for chess-based castle architecture. But perhaps the most profound legacy lies in how we think about thinking itself. Medieval chess players were the first to systematically study decision-making under pressure, developing concepts that would later become core principles of game theory, operations research, and artificial intelligence. When John von Neumann formalized game theory in the 20th century, he was building on foundations laid by chess-playing monks who had analyzed the mathematics of strategic choice centuries earlier. The psychological insights of medieval chess masters found new relevance in modern cognitive science. Their observations about pattern recognition, intuitive decision-making, and strategic planning mapped perfectly onto emerging theories of how the brain processes complex information. The medieval understanding of chess as a mirror of mind anticipated discoveries about neural networks and cognitive mapping by centuries. Corporate strategy adopted more than just chess metaphors. The medieval practice of gaming out scenarios on the chessboard evolved into modern business simulation and wargaming techniques. When modern executives gather in strategic planning sessions, they're participating in a tradition that began when medieval merchants used chess to model market movements. Even space exploration felt the game's influence. NASA's mission planning protocols drew heavily on chess-derived principles of position and timing. The complex orbital mechanics of spaceflight required the same kind of multi-move calculation that medieval players had perfected. When Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, the sequence of maneuvers had been planned using systems of thought first developed for plotting chess endgames. The digital revolution brought medieval chess full circle. Computer chess engines, reaching levels of play far beyond human capability, use evaluation methods that would be recognizable to any medieval master. The concept of position value, calculated by modern chess AI's traces directly back to the positional theories developed in medieval Baghdad and refined in European monasteries. In the end, medieval chess's greatest legacy was not in any specific technique or strategy, but in something more fundamental. It gave humanity its first systematic way to think about thinking. The game provided a framework for understanding how we make decisions, how we plan ahead, how we deal with uncertainty and competition. These insights, first glimpsed across checkered boards in torchlit castle halls, became the foundation for how we approach complex problems in the modern world. As artificial intelligence advances and new forms of strategy emerge, the medieval masters' insights remain surprisingly relevant. They understood something timeless about the nature of strategic thought, that whether played out on wooden boards, digital screens, or the grand stage of history, the fundamental patterns of strategy remain the same. In their patient analysis of 64 squares, they created not just a game, but a universal language of strategic thought that continues to shape how we understand and interact with an increasingly complex world. The ghost of Al-Adli, watching Deep Blue calculate its billions of positions per second, might smile in recognition. The machine's silicon heart still beats to rhythms first discovered in the golden age of chess, when humans first began to systematically explore the infinite possibilities hidden in those simple squares of black and white. The eternal game, a timeless bridge of strategy. Magnus Carlsen sits alone in his Oslo study, analyzing a 1,000-year-old chess problem discovered in a forgotten Arabic manuscript. The world champion's neural patterns, mapped by researchers, light up in exactly the same regions as those of a medieval grandmaster studying by candlelight. Time collapses across the board. The ancient and modern minds think as one. In the desert outside Dubai, architects design a new kind of smart city, its layout optimized by AI algorithms that unknowingly mirror the principles of medieval chess-based urban planning. The ancient wisdom of controlling key squares and maintaining flexible lines of movement proves as relevant to urban flow as it was to castle defense. Streets and buildings arrange themselves in patterns that would make a chess-playing merchant feel strangely at home. Deep in the Pentagon's Cyber Command Center, analysts track digital intrusions using visualization software that bears an uncanny resemblance to medieval chess notation. The attackers and defenders move through virtual space in patterns first documented by monastery scribes. In the eternal dance of strategy, the pieces may change, but the underlying choreography remains. A quantum computer in Mountain View calculates possibilities across multiple universes, its qubits arranging themselves in patterns that echo the mystical chess numerology of Jewish Kabbalists. The medieval quest to find divine order in the game's mathematical structures finds new expression in the enigmatic realm of quantum mechanics. The United Nations Security Council chamber, with its carefully arranged seating and complex protocols, functions remarkably like a giant chessboard. Modern diplomats, like their medieval counterparts, engage in elaborate positional plays where physical location conveys power and influence. The game's ancient lessons about position and control remain encoded in the highest levels of global politics. In a Tokyo research lab, a robot learns to manipulate objects by studying chess movements, its artificial neural networks reconstructing the same pathways that allowed medieval minds to transform abstract board positions into concrete strategic principles. The machine learning algorithms, stripped to their core, reveal ancient patterns of thought dressed in digital clothes. An archaeologist in northern India unearths a new chess piece that challenges our understanding of the game's evolution. The artifact suggests alternative paths not taken, different ways the game might have developed. It reminds us that strategy, like evolution, is not a straight line, but a branching tree of possibilities. Yet perhaps the most profound echo comes from an unexpected quarter. In the vast data centers that power modern artificial intelligence, machines play billions of chess games against themselves, evolving strategies that humans have never seen. But when analysts decode these alien patterns, they find hidden within them principles first discovered by medieval players, as if strategic truth itself has a shape, and all minds, whether organic or silicon, must eventually converge upon it. The medieval masters who first systematized chess were doing more than creating a game. They were building a bridge that connected past to future, east to west, human to machine, concrete to abstract. They created a language of pure strategy that transcends time, culture, and now even the bounds of human cognition itself. As twilight falls over Carlsen's study, he finally solves the ancient puzzle. The solution, beautiful in its inevitability, could have been discovered by any sufficiently deep mind at any point in history. In that moment, the world champion touches something eternal, the pure Platonic form of strategy itself, glimpsed through the lens of 64 squares that have captivated minds for over 1,000 years. The game plays on, its wooden pieces long since evolved into electronic pulses, its medieval wisdom embedded in silicon and light. Yet somewhere in the pattern of play, in the eternal dance of position and possibility, the ghosts of old masters still move their pieces across the board of time, teaching us, move by move, how to think about thinking itself. The eternal game continues, and we are all, in our own ways, still playing it.